Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching how to paint Nevada Falls in Yosemite National Park. Without further ado, let's get painting. For today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be using Prussian Blue, Perylene Green, Sap Green, VanDyke Brown, Burnt Umber, and Payne's Gray by Winsor & Newton. The paper I have taped down here is a size 5 by 7 inches, and I'm going to be using a size 2, size 6, and size 12 Princeton round brush. To get started, I'm going to do a really light sketch using super watered down Payne's Gray. And I'm going to start by doing kind of an angled line here that's just crooked and pointed downward. From here, I'm going to just do a vertical line that's kind of slightly angled towards the left there. Then I'm going to just skip this part here and do another line, but this time it's going to be more horizontal. And then from here, it's going to swoop downward, slightly angling towards the right just a little bit. Then from here, I'm just going to do a really light, faint line here, and this is just a very loose sketch of where our waterfall is going to fall. And then from here, I'm going to do a slightly angled line to the right, and then from there I'm just going to do another vertical line kind of swooping towards the right bottom corner of the page. Then about halfway up here from this line, I'm going to do just a slightly angled, jagged, horizontal line that swoops slightly towards the right. And then from here, I'm going to sketch out just a few really loose, jagged, kind of boulder rock shapes. And again, they're almost like jagged little hills that are kind of stacked on top of each other. The more irregular they look, the better. That's just how rocks kind of are. So just some jagged, loose kind of hill shapes for those. And then I'm gonna do a rounded C curve shape for the start of our pathway. And then towards the top of this C curve, I'm going to start very narrow and do a little miniature kind of curved line here. And then from there, I'm going to really elongate and exaggerate the trail to go really, really far out towards the right there. So the trail is quite wide towards the bottom and then really narrow towards the top. And then I'm just gonna let my sketch set and dry before I move on, and then we'll add some more details. Now that my sketch is dry, I'm just gonna take my size 12 brush here and just do a really light wash of water in the sky. I'm just painting right above the silhouette of the mountains and waterfall area. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of Prussian Blue. And I'm just going to fully saturate just a really nice, simple wash of Prussian Blue. Okay, and while that part is drying, I'm going to start to work on our rocks, and I'm going to mix a combination of burnt umber and a touch of Payne's Gray. And I'm just gonna start by applying some deep kind of shadows and kind of crevice lines as well. So at the bottom and towards the left side of the rocks, I'm just adding this element of shading. And it's very loose and jagged and irregular. Okay, and then from here, I'm just gonna let these areas dry and then we'll move on to the next part of the painting. Now my sky is dry and I wanna start working on some of our mountain area here. And I'm gonna start by doing a really watered down version of Payne's Gray with some burnt umber. I'm gonna add plenty of water to that because I kind of just want a muted wash tone. And I'm just gonna start by applying this color all the way to about 2 inches below here. And then I'm just gonna take some plain water and just drag down some watered down version of that color. We're gonna have some misty kind of pine trees down below, so I don't want this color to be too dark, especially in this last inch or so. I'm now gonna apply this wash of color off towards the right. And I'm just gonna do a little bit of a kind of point off towards the top right of the waterfall. And then just drag down this wash. And I'm leaving quite an opening here for right now because we want kind of a misty water effect that we'll be going for. I'm just buffing out this gray wash so that way I don't have any harsh water lines. And then from here, I'm just gonna take some plain water and just kind of subtly blend these edges here. And I'm just lifting some of the gray up with a lot of pressure with my large brush. And then I'm just going to buff out this harsh line on the left edge as well. Just softening that sketch line a little bit. Okay, and then from here, I'm just gonna do a very light wash of this color we mixed again. And I'm just gonna add a very tiny amount of Prussian Blue in this left area. Okay, and then from here, I just want to take my size 6 brush, and I'm going to start to build kind of the texture on the rock face. And I'm going to start by doing a swooping horizontal line. And then I'm just going to buff out that line a little bit. From here, I'm going to do just a few kind of more jagged, loose vertical lines here. And then I'm going to do a few up towards the top as well. And some are kind of thick and chunky. It's just very loose. And then from here, I'm just going to do some dry brush strokes using the belly of my brush just to get some kind of rough texture with the side of my brush here. From here, I'm just going to add some texture up towards the top of the rock to kind of mimic some pine trees using the same color, and just tapping with the tip of my brush here. All right, now I'm going to start to lay out just a little bit more shading, taking some plain Payne's gray. I'm just going to add a little bit of shading to the left of the waterfall here. I'm doing kind of a swooping curve. And then I'm going to take a dry brush and just kind of subtly buff out some of these transition colors here between the white and the Payne's gray. Then I'm just going to drag it out a little bit more towards the right. Then I just want to add and build some more depth, so I'm going to add a little bit more Payne's gray towards the left and just allow it to kind of bleed out. And then I'm going to add a touch of Payne's gray towards the top, very muted. And just adding a few touches of it towards the right. Okay. Now that this left side is a little bit more dry, I'm going to take a touch more of Payne's gray and just kind of re-outline some of the crevices here, starting with that horizontal line, and then from there just doing a few more crevices that are more defined in the rock face. Just doing a few touches of some jagged kind of vertical lines and texture. And now let's move to the right side. And I'm just going to start by shading the right area a little bit more using the Payne's Gray and Burnt Umber combination that we mixed. And then from here, I am just going to buff out this transition line and just drag it out across because I kind of want to get this mist effect where there's not as much harsh lines here with the waterfall. From there, I'm just going to add a few touches of Payne's Gray with the tip of my brush. And up towards the top there. Then I'm going to just take a little bit more of that Payne's Gray and Burnt Umber blend and just take it and drag it towards the right. And then I'll add a little bit more towards this mountain that's smaller, just towards the right side. Now I'm just taking Payne's Gray and I'm just going to add a few elements of shading. On this smaller mountain here. And then I'm just going to take some water and just buff out any harsh lines. Okay, and then from here, I am going to add a little bit of texture using the Burnt Umber and Payne's Gray blend, and I'm just going to add some just texture mimicking some trees up towards the top of these mountains, and then just buffing out that line with a wet brush. And I'm going to add some on this top area here. And then just allow these areas to set. Alrighty, and next up, I'm going to take some of our Payne's Gray and Burnt Umber blend and add it to our rocks here. And just filling in any areas that are white. And I'm just going to buff out some of the shadow transitions by just adding this pressure with my brush. I'm going to add more Payne's Gray towards this left corner just a bit. Okay, and then from here, I would like to paint my pathway, and I'm just going to fill this with some water. And then just add a touch of Payne's Gray sorry, burnt umber. And just allow that to bleed out softly. Okay. Now, before I move on to any other step, I'm going to take a little bit more Payne's Gray and start to kind of add some texture in the rock face here by doing just a few vertical lines and even buffing out some of this water line here. So I'm just adding some texture to the rock face to the far right. Maybe a couple horizontal lines. And then I'm just going to kind of buff out this water line here and take a little bit more Payne's Gray just to outline the separation of this larger mountain and a smaller mountain. And then I'm gonna just take a little bit more of that Payne's Gray and burnt umber blend and just add a few more bits of texture and crevices in this rock face. Okay, now we can start to slowly build our misty pine trees. And to start, I'm just going to take my size 12 brush this time, and I'm going to add some water towards this left side just above the rocks. And just below the trees, sorry, just below the waterfall, I've got trees on the brain. And I'm going to angle the water slightly upward, and angle towards the left, and then just bring it down. And I'm going to take my size 2 brush and just mix some Sap Green and a touch of Perylene Green, just to make a nice vibrant green here. And I'm going to do some misty pines by starting with some vertical lines here and just adding some texture as I go. But I'm first starting with some vertical lines, and then I'm going to take my brush and just buff out the watercolor here so that way it fogs out. I'm going to add some of my vertical lines towards the right as well. And then I just take my brush and buff that out. Okay, and now I'm just going to take some more Perylene Green and Sap Green and just add some texture to all of these lines here, kind of following the silhouette of a pointed kind of cone shape where it's narrow towards the top and wider towards the bottom. And it's just going to be very, very loose. And I'm going to make some of the trees taller than others, and so it's good to have some variety in the tree height so that way things don't all look the same. And I'm going to add just a few touches while this area is still wet at the bottom of Perylene Green, so this deep dark green, all the way up against the rocks. And towards the pathway. And then I'm going to add just a touch of Payne's gray, just to add even more depth and shading. And I'll kind of blend out those areas with a little bit more water. And I'll carry on with the rest of my trees. Using my size 6 brush, I'm just going to smooth out the transition line between the Misty trees and the rocks here. And I'll do the same thing over to the right where the pathway meets the forest. And then I'm just going to add just a few trees in this blank area here. Just a few really loose trees using my size 6 brush, so they're going to be a little bit naturally larger. Using that Perylene Green and Sap Green blend. And this area where the mist is forming should be almost dry. It's okay if it's slightly damp and kind of bleeds out just a bit, because we still kind of want that loose effect. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of texture towards the pathway silhouette here. Off towards the right, I just want to do a few watery trees over here. So I'm just taking some water in this area and just bringing it about 1.5 inches or so to the right. And over to this far right, we're going to have 2 large pine trees that are going to take over that area. And I'm just going to repeat that same kind of misty effect process off in this little area here. And using that Perylene Green and Sap Green blend, I will start by adding the little trunks like so. Doing a few that are taller, some that are small. And then buffing this area out. And then just adding a few bits of Payne's gray and Perylene green to just add more depth and shading towards the bottom. It's nice and loose and watery. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add my finishing details to those pine trees. Okay, so now we can go ahead and get started on our pine trees, and I'm going to start by using some burnt umber using my size 6 brush, and I'm going to apply just a little bit of water first in this corner. And then I'm going to apply our burnt umber, and I'm going to start by doing a vertical line using my size 6 brush. And it almost goes all the way to the top. And then from there, I'm going to take some Perylene Green and some Sap Green and just do some really loose brush strokes on either side, almost doing this kind of swooping motion to the left and to the right, and then just adding some texture using the tip of my brush. And I want to be sure to incorporate some areas of greenery where it's just sap green, and maybe some areas where it's just Perylene green, so you can get some variety of shades of green involved. And you can even take some more water and add it to either one of those colors to get just a lighter tone or value of the color. And I'm also making sure to paint over the trunk in some areas, especially while the trunk is still wet. And again, the top of the tree is more narrow, and as we get towards the bottom, it slightly increases its width. I'm gonna add just a little bit more Perylene Green at the base, just to add some more depth to the tree and some more shadows. And from here, I'm just gonna take a little bit of plain sap green and water it down a little bit, and then just add Just a little bit more delicate pressure, sorry, delicate brush strokes, not pressure, with light pressure, just to add a touch of more detail to the tree. I'm just adding this kind of wispy, kind of feathery texture in just a few areas. And then to build up more depth and shading, I'm just going to do a few saturated touches of Perylene Green. And if you don't have Perylene Green, you can just add a good saturated amount of burnt umber, Sap Green or Hooker's Green with some Payne's Gray or some Prussian Blue. I think the golden trio, I'm making a deep green, is a base green, some blue, and some brown. And that'll kind of help form that nice kind of depth. Okay, so now I'm going to do a really loose watery tree towards the right, starting with our burnt umber. And the tree is going to go all the way to the top of the page. And I'm just going to water down this corner area here. And then I'm just going to take some Sap Green to start. And this tree is just going to be a little bit more loose because it's got more sun and mist towards the top here. So I'm just adding a few elements of watered down Sap Green to start and just incorporating my way down and allowing some of the white background to pop as well. I'll add some more Sap Green towards the bottom corner here. And then I'm just going to add a few of those kind of wispy, feathery texture bits on either side. I'm going to blend out some of the trunk in some areas, so that way the trunk doesn't look like it's perfectly visible through the whole height of the tree. And then I'm going to take some Perylene Green and just incorporate a few loose brush strokes to add some shading and depth to the greenery. Okay, so there is our tree to the far right, and now I'm going to add a couple of trees off towards the left here, and I'm just going to repeat that same process that I did over here, but to the left, and I'm going to maybe have just a little bit more of the tree trunk visible here. So starting with that Payne's Gray, not Payne's Gray, burnt umber. And I'm just doing a vertical line that's just a little bit thick. And then this tree is going to be slightly thinner and shorter. Okay, so for this tree, I'm just going to add a few loose branches towards the bottom that are slightly angled downward. And I'll incorporate just a few towards the top as well. And the tree branches are almost like the letter Y. They're just jagged and loose. Some are just a curved, almost C shape. Okay, and I'll add just a few towards the left tree as well. Okay, and then from here, I'm just gonna add some more greenery with our Perylene Green, Sap Green blend. Now I'm just gonna add a touch of just some plain sap green just to act as a highlight and kind of a pop of color. And next, I'm gonna take my size 2 brush and get some VanDyke Brown, and all I'm gonna do is outline the left side of some of our tree trunks and just add some kind of vertical line texture, just weaving in between some of the greenery. And I'll do this kind of shading all over just the 4 trunks that we have. Now I'm just going to take some VanDyke Brown and add just a bit of it on either side of this pathway here using my size 2 brush. And then once I've blotted a few elements of the VanDyke Brown, I'm going to take my brush and just do a really loose, kind of jagged left to right motion, just to give the pathway a little bit more shading and texture. And lastly, I'll just add just a few pops of Perylene Green off towards the right here, and just a few pops as well towards the left. Okay, so now I just want to add a little bit more texture to this mountain area here using our blend of VanDyke Brown and Payne's Gray. And all I'm going to do is just grab this color and just do some kind of dry brush texture using that color. And the belly of my size 2 brush, just getting this nice kind of dry brush loose texture here. Okay, and then from here, I just want to take a step back and just evaluate my artwork and see if there's any finishing touches I would like to add. And looking at it, I would definitely like to just add a little bit more detail to this area of the waterfall. And all I'm going to do is just bring this left corner of the mountain a little bit more towards the left. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to take some more Payne's Gray and just outline just a couple areas of this left side to get a beautiful shadow and add more contrast. And again, I will buff it out just a little bit, but I just want to make this area pop a little bit more. Beautiful. Now we have this nice shadow here towards the left. And then from here, I am going to add, I think, just a couple birds off towards the right. I'm a sucker for adding birds to landscapes. This is totally optional. You do not have to do this, but I'm gonna just take some VanDyke Brown and Payne's Gray mixed. And I'm going to just do some, basically some really just simple kind of lowercase dainty V letters, like these flattened V letter shapes. I'm gonna do one large one and maybe one small one that has its wings flapped more upward. And that is it. I hope that you enjoyed this watercolor landscape tutorial of Nevada Falls in Yosemite. Be sure to check out my other watercolor tutorials of Yosemite National Park as well if you enjoyed this one. And be sure to subscribe to my channel so that way you don't miss any upcoming watercolor tutorials.